Look, I'm joined now by Harry Cole, who's the political editor of The Sun. Harry, your reaction, I guess, first of all, to the sentencing itself seems a lot, seems severe, but some are going to be presumably calling for even more. Yeah, even though the judge did as much as he could do.
I've just come up from the Sun newsroom floor, and it's very rare you have the entire newsroom in silence, all glued to a television, watching, hanging on every word of that judge. And it's amazing, actually, that we've come so far that you get to see these things on TV now. I think it's totally the right thing to do. Justice must be seen to be done. Look, 9 days short of his 18th birthday, I think the judge has thrown every single possible thing, but as much as a book as he is legally possible to throw within.
Did he do a good job?
Yeah, I think he did. Look, it's clear he wanted to bang him up for his whole life. It's pretty clear he's probably not going to get out before he's a very old man. I'd be amazed if he gets through the next couple of years in prison at this rate, frankly.
Well, I was going to say that.
The level of detail about the crimes that have come out now in the last in the sentencing, the only thing that scumbag has done is plead guilty to spare the full trial. But that came at the last. He
has, but
minute.
Also played up, you know, and as the juvenile psychopath that he is.
Yeah, I mean,
and as is the trait of all serial killers, it seems, for the sake of garnering attention to himself.
Whatever.
Well, if it's of any consolation to him, as I said earlier on, I think he does go down in history for all the wrong reasons, alongside Myra Hindley, Ian Huntley and Ian Brady.
Well, I think he goes down, and I think we forget about he even exists, and let's remember the memories of those poor girls that are killed, and the life-changing injuries given to the injuries to the people that put themselves in danger,
and the psychological effect on Southport and the victims that were there, and of course teachers that have now been victims, have been stabbed in the process of what he did, but also now had to give witness statements, victim statements today. I mean, I can't imagine how on earth they managed to hold that together, frankly.
After tomorrow's papers, I hope we never hear this scumbag's name ever again.
Well, no, indeed, and I've been hesitant in saying it, but of course we should. And as Peter Blexley said earlier on, we must make sure that there is enough about this to ensure that a future parole board, albeit in 51 years' time, understands the disgust, the severity, the evilness of it. Look, let's talk about the politics of this, Harry, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Because this will get political tomorrow.
Well, it's been political from day one, this story, hasn't it?
Well, it has, whether it be the consequential unrest and riots, whether it be the potential cover-up by government and so on. We can talk about that all day, but I think if we could just look forward kind of 24, 48 hours, do we now think, and I hate to put it this way, but this is what I think might happen, is that politicians on all sides of Parliament, whoever they are, Conservatives, Reform, Liberal Democrats even, and particularly Labour as the government, will now see this as an opportunity to grandstand a little bit, particularly over the changing of sentencing guidelines, which a lot of people will be calling for.
So, I mean, if you can see how this week's played out, Keir Starmer came out very quickly on Monday morning at 8 a.m. to give a press conference about this. It's the only and first time I think I can remember Sir Keir, sorry, give me a correct title, Sir Keir ever criticising the law. Yeah. He says, look, if this wasn't terrorism, then it was clearly designed to terrorise, so therefore he would have been able to be given a whole life sentence even if he was under 21.
Well, even though Keir Starmer was part of the cohort that set the sentencing guidelines when he was.
But I think politicians are finally waking up, and I think they're probably late to the party. We saw what happened in the scenes we saw in over the summer, but the level of public anger and disgust about this not just this story, not just this horrific incident, but just generally the sort of head-banging that people have to go through now when they look at soft sentencing and letting people out after letting people out after half their sentences. Prisons are full, letting people out that shouldn't be walking the streets who are allowed out. I do think that if we have to sit through a little bit of grandstanding for something to change, then I can get on board with that.
But Harry, I don't want politicians to see this as a means of getting credit for
no,
attention.
But as long as I totally get your point. But as long as law is toughened up, as long as the laws are rewritten in this inquiry that may have been set up to avoid claims of a cover-up. Keir Starmer saying, look, he did know about these things, but he was told he didn't want to risk collapsing the trial. Something has gone dangerously and badly wrong in this case. And the correct result is we do have a proper and public inquiry into it. If we have to have a bit of politicians grandstanding while we get there, I think in the long run, hopefully, the results of the questions that are answered will be worth having to sit through and
well, as long as it's not the old trick of just kicking this into the long grass, so that the outcome is in 3 years' time and everyone's kind of high. I would hope we'd never forget about this case, but you know how human behaviour is. We of course haven't seen the terms of reference for this inquiry, so it may well be that in Yvette Cooper's kind of enthusiasm to announce this the other day in the Commons, means that the terms of reference actually ensure that, let's say, the inquiry looks in the right places and not the wrong places from a government's perspective.
Yeah, I mean, just look at the charge list on the failures of the state. Yes, prevent. You know, there's already been an investigation into Prevent that said it's not really fit for purpose, and people are slipping through the cracks. Yes, he didn't fit into a far right nutter or a jihadi Islamist label, as the judge said. He said, look, we can't give you a terrorist label, but what you did was clearly a terror act, but you can't charge you for it.
Yeah.
We need to have all of that out. We need to look at Prevent properly, not just why but is Prevent fit for purpose?
And the authorities, because even if he didn't fit the profile as a terrorist, you would imagine that whether it be sectioning him under the Mental Health Act or the police doing something should have been done.
Caught carrying a knife 10 times, turned up to school with a knife, turned up, was googling, googling school shootings. Like the red flags were literally
red and massive. Yes. Let's talk about Never Mind the Balance.
Yeah. So we talked about this today. We had Matt Goodwin, who's a professor. He's a very stringent sort of anti-migration sort of thinker.
He pulls no punches, does he?
He does not. And we had Dan Hodges, who's a commentator who was they ended up agreeing, frankly, because there's not much you can disagree on all of this.
Can we see a clip?
Yeah, let's do it.
I think the vast majority of people in this country smell a cover-up, and they smell hypocrisy and double standards, because if you look at how Keir Starmer has responded to previous attacks, whether you think about attacks here in Westminster, whether you think about the Finsbury Park mosque attack, even Labour politicians responding to Joe Cox, some of these cases were considered terrorism within 18 minutes, Harry. This time around, suddenly we've had ambivalence, we've had obfuscation, we've had a refusal to release details to the public. He's been hiding behind this contempt of court nonsense. And again, it all adds up to a two-tier Keir narrative that actually, had this been related to the far right, had this been related to some white guy with far-right literature on his PC, we all would have known about it within 10 minutes. This time around, suddenly it's different.
So that's on the Talk and, of course, the Sun YouTube channel right now. Dan Hodges apparently had a rather different view to Matt Goodwin, is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the fear of collapsing this trial, but the problem is
do you think that was over-egged?
Well, I think it probably was, because the bar for the government have admitted, Yvette Cooper admitted the other day, look, contempt of court laws in the modern age don't quite work, because if you say nothing, you allow a vacuum to be filled by social media,
when we had the Parsons Green issue and Joe Cox and so on, it was immediately labelled by the government, and their narrative was that it was terrorism.
There's also the fact is that, in previous times, the fact that someone was known to the authorities, it might not be announced by a minister, but, the nod has been given, shall we say. Yeah. What feels weird and what people are angry about, I think what people are mystified about, is in this case, and yes, because there were riots in the subsequent days, there seems to have been a sort of almost overcautious desire not to say anything about it, when actually that perhaps was as dangerous as saying something was not saying it, because people thought, well, what is going on? How could something so horrific happen to such innocent people? There must be something that we're not being told, and that anger, manifested itself.
Well, it did, and the judge again went to great pains today. I mean, to talk about should we just call him the assailant rather than mentioning his name? Talked about obviously his history, and there was clear evidence of him having murderous intent. They found apparently not just ricin, but they found a crossbow and a zombie knife under his bed, and so on and so forth. But he also went to great pains to say that Axel Rudakubana did not cause the summer riots. Some here might say, I'll choose my words carefully, that actually it was that vacuum caused by certain politicians that did.
There was a lot. All of these things are slightly more complicated than just describing one factor to them. But I think in the modern age, the state has got, the fact we were sitting there watching the judge deliver those remarks is a remarkable development in how the state, is opened up. That needs to be goes all the way down through the system, from arrest to charge.
Hope it does. Harry, we've got to leave it there, I'm afraid. Fast-moving show. Thank you very much for coming in from upstairs.
A lot of angry people there.